At today's project, we're going to work on the MT09. We're going to try to do some work on the scoops, replace the screening, and it's not a simple one-shot thing. We had to do a little testing of what we wanted, and the way it worked out, for some surprising different use of materials that I didn't expect. But at the end, I accomplished what I wanted to. I wanted to change the look from black with bolts in it to silver with no bolts. And it was a little trickier than I thought it would be. Making the patterns is always a little tricky. Tried to include that on this video. And in the end, well, the video speaks for itself. If you think I went in the right direction, great. And if you don't, it'll be easy to change it in the future. Now today's little detail change that we want to make, we want to try to come up with something a little more attractive for the screening that's on the scoops. I have some ideas, and I'll try to go through the mental process that I went through. The number one thing is I already photoshopped them in silver. In bright silver, I wasn't sure about it. And I don't like seeing the bolts, so I came up with an alternative of putting silver screening over the black. I went the other day and bought the screening. I don't know if I'm going to like it. We're going to have to do a little test. But like everything else on this motorcycle, I do it one step at a time, one step at a time. And in the meantime, I've not missed. I had the last 2 days of riding, so I really didn't even lose any riding days. But this will be a relatively simple job, but it's a small detail. I hope that's going to change, again, improve the look of the motorcycle from the day I bought it to now, and you can be the judge if I've succeeded or not. Now, every one of the bikes that I've restored, worked on, customized, whatever, there's 1,000 little details that you really don't see until you look real close. And all of a sudden you notice, ooh, that looks a little nicer than a stock bike. Well, that's what we're looking for. No big radical change, small details. And one of the best examples is when you change the color of the wheels of a bike. In this case, we have 2 sets of wheels for this bike, a gold set and the black set. Just by changing the wheels, when I change tires, you change the whole look of the bike. It's called evil twinning, and in this case I have a whole set of red bodywork for this bike, but I've kind of fallen in love with the green over the years. And some bikes become a 900-hour down to the frame restoration. We've done it both ways, and the way I've done the MT09 I think is a little bit nicer and a little bit more enjoyable, at least for me. But no matter what you do, there's always small details, and those small details, you don't think they add up. The other thing, you think nobody's going to notice it. And then all of a sudden you park next to a bike that's totally stock at a meetup and you look, wow, that really does look better. But it's all in the eye of the beholder anyway. And on our MT09 we have done, my feeling is that every time I've taken something that's flat black and made it the nice Yamaha purpley blue, every time I've gotten rid of the flat black and added shiny paint, I like the bike even more. And these little covers I made, those are not the last of the little covers. I have a couple more on my list. Painting the tail section was just a major change to the bike. And none of this cost a lot of money. It's a lot of time and a can of paint. And the scoops, and thank you John Parthia for all the time he spent with the photoshopping. But the one thing about them being totally black, and I've noticed when you put the bike out in the sun, it kind of disappears. And I kind of wanted that, since that's one of the defining features of this bike. I wanted that to stand out more. Now, I originally thought I'd make a piece of carbon fiber, drill little baby holes in it. You don't see the carbon fiber. I was going to make it out of some kind of shiny material. And in the end, I thought, before I do any of that, let me try the screening. So that's clip in and snap in a couple of spots. So you want to, if you pull that apart for the first time, slow and gentle would be the name of the game. And where the rubber bushing is, put a tiny drop of grease or Vaseline on it, because you don't want to pull on it and snap one of those little tangs. Now, it's from all the photoshopping that I've done that I noticed the buttons, I'll call them buttons, they're really bolts. To me, they didn't add anything. And I've looked at, see, and I just as an example, on an R1, those scoops in the front are functional scoops. They really do suck air in. And they go into pathways down into the airbox. These are cosmetic. So I can really have a free hand here. If these really were ducting air in, what would happen is you might change the fuel ratio. I don't know. But then I wouldn't be so prone to fool around with this. But because they're just cosmetic, and because that is a defining feature of the motorcycle, I'd like to make that a little more unique. And we have 4 or 5 other little things on here. I still have a list. And because we're in that part of the season where you can ride one day, not ride the next day. It rains, it snows, you never know what's happening. But every one of these little parts that I've made, that I call them unique, every one of them, in the end, it adds up. I take a picture of the motorcycle when I got it, the day I bought it, and now it's my motorcycle. So step 1 is we got to get down in here with a little Allen wrench or something and pop those little rivets. And by the way, some of them, and I don't know if this is true of all of them, but when I took them, one was a little bit bigger and one was shorter. So I'm going to try to replace them again in exactly the way they came out. Because what happened the other time, I reversed them, and maybe on all bikes, maybe the Yamaha just used up extra stock. The top was a little, and when I reversed it, it was nice and solid. So you want to be aware of that if you have one of the bikes that they're not exactly the same. Now, I always like to explain to people, because not everybody has been used these in the past. I've had them on the R1, of course. What happens is once you press these into the part where they go, and you snap that down, that mushrooms out the bottom to where that now is like a rivet. And these are real handy. And by the way, you can buy these in Lowe's for about 1/3 the price of any of the motorcycle places I've seen. And I'm sure they make them from China too, but from a motorcycle dealer, they always seem to be overpriced. Now the good news is the last time we took this apart, obviously to paint it, what had happened was I put a very small amount of wheel bearing grease on the rubber bushing. Because the first time from the factory, they don't do that. And so what happened, you really got to tug on this part to get it out. And this is just one screw. Let me get that out of the way. And now you can pull this off, but you got to be real careful. And I kind of just wiggle it, and I can see the bushing, There we go. And it tucks in to these little spots up here where you have to kind of wiggle it. So rather than make this a problem, I will just put the ones I don't need back. And this piece, again, is cosmetic, and this is the piece I want to replace. And that's only held on with those little, I guess you call them rivets, those pop rivets. These 2 bolts come right off. They release this part. And we would either be able to, I had even thought about in the very beginning just painting this screening silver, but then you still see the bolts. And one of the objectives is not to see the bolts. So we're going to take this off, take it downstairs, and see if we can come up with some way or some improvement. I guess we're going to find out the hard way, one way or another. Let's see, what's holding that in there now? We got something else holding that in. There you go. I don't want to force anything. So we're going to replicate this with our silver screening downstairs. And then look at it side by side and see which side we like better. So that's what's involved in the disassembly here. Relatively straightforward, easy. And again, this is going to be a small cosmetic change. I think it's going to result in a big change when we're done. I guess we're going to find out. Now on the workbench, priority things we have to do. There are still some things I want to do. And the fender is one of them. And I still have some experimental stuff to do with the windshields. And we have tires to mount on some of the other motorcycles, but we're coming down a home stretch here. And the workbench, once it's clear for the spring, it's riding time. So this might turn out to be a little more complicated than I thought, but everything does. But in the end, we'll get it, I'm sure. But the first thing to think about, I want to get that screening that I bought and cut this out of the screening just to see if I like the way it looks. Step 1. Now, the other day when I was shopping for material, I got this from Lowe's, and believe it or not, it was hard to find metal. Everything now is nylon plastic. So I wanted to see, well, let's see what the deal is here with cutting this. I don't think I'm going to need a lot of it, but in case I decide to raise chickens, I guess I'll have a lot of chicken wire. But this was shiny, and if I bought the nylon, of course, I don't think it would even work, but let's get some of this out so I can see it and flatten it out. They really had this wrapped with a tape and cellophane and cardboard and plastic end caps. Jeez, unbelievable. Yeah, they have this wrapped up so, like I guess so you don't cut yourself, because there are some sharp edges, but Now, the first thing is to just look at, let me clear off the workbench here. And, whoop, and clean the workbench up, and we'll see if we can lay out a piece of this and cut. This will cut with scissors, I'm sure. And the material cut beautifully, but of course there's all little sharp edges and splinters. So this is what we're starting with. Now my question was going to be, if I put this, just put it right on top, what is it going to look like? Well, the problem is I can still see the hole. I don't want to see the hole. I don't want to see the bolt or the hole. So it looks like what I'm going to have to do maybe is somehow fudge that in, and I don't know if I can, or just replace this piece with a piece of wire without the hole in it. So now we get to the point of this where it gets trickier than you think it is to get the look that you want, and it's not as obvious as you think it is. It isn't like a question of just, again, we can't paint this silver. It's a very simple reason. You're still going to see the holes. So if I start with this, maybe the answer is to put 2 or 3 layers on there, but I don't want to see the holes. I don't want to see the bolts, and then to fit that into the scoop itself. So the next thing, because I don't want to see behind here, I don't want to see those bolts. And this is sandpaper, just ordinary wet and dry sandpaper, which is waterproof. If this ever got wet and riding in the rain or something, it wouldn't be a big deal. But this is really, I guess, one of the choices I have is I've got to figure out a way. I want to see the screening, but I don't want to see the holes. This may be the answer, and it's going to be easy to figure out, because if we don't like it, we have plenty of sandpaper in stock too. So one of the things I have to take into account is which way I want to see this. I want it to be this way. So I want to have the part, I want to have it cut that way. Otherwise I'm going to have the wrong side on the sandpaper, and that's going to be a problem. Anybody that's a modeler knows there's going to be a left side and a right side, and they're not interchangeable. So I knew this might get a little more complicated than I thought, but let's see if I can just get a little view of what this is going to look like. I'll be real happy. Now, believe it or not, when I stack them in there, that looks pretty much like what I want, what I expected to see. And I don't know if that could be a lot better, but I need to figure out how I'm going to attach this to the part now. That's a little tricky too, since we're not going to be able to use the bolt holes. I need to somehow attach it to, and I guess we're going to figure this out as we go. But that's the challenging part about making custom one-of-a-kind parts. Now, to go from the original parts and patterns that we made, there was a lot of fine-tuning, and this is all the things that have to happen. But to finalize and have that final pattern that fits real well, because now, if you look at this, if it's not an exact copy, because we're not going to have that piece going in. This is going to get attached to the scoop itself. So it's a little bit different, at least up to now, and we'll figure this out as we go. So now I'm going to cut another piece of this, because I did cut it a little bit short up here. You can see that doesn't exactly match up, but that's why we have a lot of screening. We'll just cut a piece that's more accurate. And as I'm going along, I always make a Cheerios box, the final pattern, so when I make the other side, I'll already have that shape, which is very accurate, and the sandpaper that's very accurate. In this piece, I just need to cut another piece of screening. Luckily, I have enough screening to do the whole house here. Now, believe it or not, what worked the best is just good old-fashioned Gorilla Tape, holding that in place. And what's good about that, I can take this off, remove it, replace it, whatever I want to do, in a matter of just a few minutes. That is really a nice, elegant solution to a problem. Now, had I used epoxy or CA or something else, well, here's the problem. Now, when I want to evil twin this, or maybe I want to put some gold screening in there, or a piece of carbon fiber, well, I'm limited. Now I'm not limited. And that is nice and solid, as you can see. I don't think there's any downside to that. And even if there was, if somebody ran a screwdriver through there, we could just make another one up in a matter of 10-15 minutes. We already have the patterns. And we got enough extra material, maybe we'll start raising chickens on the farm this summer. Now, before I take a break for coffee, I want to see how that's going to look, because I have the other one still on the bike side by side. Now I've accomplished not having the bolts and having a little bit nicer look with the screening. It's actually It's actually a stainless steel screening, so it should never be a problem rusting. If it did rust, I'll take it out and paint it silver. I think that was an elegant solution, and I didn't know about that Gorilla Tape until I tried it, and it worked perfectly. There's chaos in the bed and breakfast today, but we have fresh cookies. Oh, these are red velvet cookies. They are so good. These, if you've never had one, you don't know what you're missing. These are Grammy cookies. And a coffee break is always a good idea right in the middle of this kind of a job. You may come up with some better idea, different idea, whatever. It was raining all day, but I was hoping it was going to stop a little bit, to be honest, before I have to go out to the garage. Because once I finish this project, I was hoping I'd get some pictures, kind of some before and after pictures. But again, a day like this, you've got to stay flexible and hope that the weather cooperates in the end. Now, I've worked on stuff like this for a long time, and I know that a lot of times you make a small change, you don't take one thing into account, and there's an interference issue. Now, I have to remember this goes behind there, this goes behind there. I've got to remember where all these little tabs are. I don't want to break any of the tabs. Now, I think just the fact that you don't see the bolts is a big upgrade, but the silver is a big upgrade too, and it's really a perfect match to the trim and the wheels and the handlebars and everything. So I don't think this could have gone better. Now, of course, the only problem is I've got to do the other side, and I'll do the other side off camera because it's going to be pretty cut and dry here. I want to make sure before I tighten this down, everything is lined up. Yep, looks good. Now, before I went on to the other side, I wanted to get a look at this just to see, just get a gut impression if this was going to be what I thought it would be. So far, I kind of like it. I wanted to go back and forth, shoot a few pictures, go down to my computer and look at them. As I look from like almost like a Photoshop thing, I think this is really going to work out fine. Now, to me, the biggest upgrade is that you don't see the bolts. And I'm going to just go down there and take care of the other one. That was pretty cut and dry, and that Gorilla Tape, that just worked out perfect, and it's as solid as a rock, and it's replaceable. So it's the best of all worlds when you're doing evil twin parts. And for sure, the second of any part you do like this, the second one, because I have patterns made now, second one will go even quicker. But I really like not seeing those bolts. And all these little mods I made, I like to make them that you don't see the bolts. I don't want to see the bolts. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me. Maybe you agree. Maybe not. And what I always like with detail changes, if you can undo them, this we can undo in a matter of 10 minutes, and put it back the way it was, then it really is an evil twin project. Now, to me, and I'm sure everybody has their own opinion, to me, just not seeing the screws is a nice upgrade. That adds a nice little detail that matches some of the paint on the bike. And to me, that's one of the small details that'll change the look of a bike. But now, I want to go do that other one off camera, and maybe it'll stop raining. We can take some pictures outside. Maybe. So, of course, the second one took a lot less time. Went just about as straightforward as you could go. And that Gorilla Tape turned out to be a beautiful, beautiful solution to a problem. No, it is true. Every project I've ever worked on, the second part always goes quicker than the first part. That's for sure. And this, pretty uneventful. Worked out pretty well, but I've got to be real careful about these tabs. I don't want to break anything. And once you line up that press pin and there's a little grease on it, couldn't be better. Now, it has the look outside that we're going to be able to shoot some pictures, but... And always a few photos that I can look down at the computer. When I look in the computer, I can see a lot more than just looking at a garage where there's a lot of shadows involved and everything. And it's still raining out. Now, all the detail changes I've made, and there have been many, I think at some point they all just start to add up. The only thing left is all little pop rivets. They go in real nice. And as you put the last one in, and you hear that click, job over. Yeah, so we're done in time to get some pictures. Let's hope the rain doesn't come back. I hope. Well, the rain turned into just a light, misty drizzle, and I really wanted to get some pictures, so it's going to give me another excuse to wipe the bike off at the end of this little photo shoot. Very short photo shoot before the rain comes. Now, I think it's fair to say that really tied that part together, and I love not seeing those bolts. And the whole idea of taking pictures and looking at them on a computer is it's just a lot more convenient, and plus in the case of today, it's not raining, and I can look at this in detail downstairs. Now this is going to be a short photo shoot because it's already starting to rain again, but I wanted to get at least some pictures to look at on a computer. So I did get a limited number of pictures, but you know what? The rain and it's cloudy, you can see the ground is soaking wet. But I did get the general thing is I really do like the way that came out. And I'm very impressed the way that little thing with the Gorilla Tape worked out. Because I was thinking I'm going to have to epoxy it and make brackets or something. That was just a really good solution to what was a problem I hadn't really solved in my mind until we actually came down to solve it. All right, the rain's coming down. I'm going to push the bike back in. I don't want to have to clean it again. I've been spending so much time cleaning salt off of this. I just want to minimize that time. But that really does, I think that adds a nice dimension. Oh, between the salt and the rain, I'm going to wear out the paint on this bike cleaning it. But I really do always like to have a clean bike. Now the question is, would it be nice to have the screening back here be similar? Well, I don't know. I won't know that until we get another work session. But the way this played out, that was. I just think that adds just another one of those small details. And this bike is nothing but small details. And the good news is we don't see the bolts. And even better news, we can undo it. When it comes time to evil twin the bike, we can undo that and make it a different color, make it carbon fiber, make it gold, whatever. But that I think is just about as good as it gets. So a good way to have spent a nice rainy day that definitely not going riding. Got the bike back, dried off, cleaned, waxed, all set for another salty ride, but doesn't look like the weather's going to do that in the next couple days. This little detail, and we have, I think there's 6 left. There's 6 little things I wanted to do. But you know what? That's an ongoing thing, and it's never finished. And when you're finished, then it's evil twin time, and then I'll want something else. But my involvement in motorcycling, I enjoy doing these kind of projects. If you're still watching, probably you enjoy something similar to this too. But these are not store-bought, make a Christmas tree out of your motorcycle parts. These are kind of like each one, and I still have, one of the things I still want to do, but I haven't finalized yet. I want to put the matching little stripe with a tooth at the end on the fender. I've got a pad full of sketches, but nothing that really floats my boat yet. But just like the windshield, it may take time, but it's coming. So the bottom line with our channel is we do try to post up something every day. We do try to do these little detail changes, and we try to share them with our friends. None of them are real expensive things. None of them are really high tech. I think most people with average tools and things could do a lot of this on your own. But the objective of everything is always the rides, and to get out on the open road. We share the rides, we share the salt, we share wiping off the bike after it rains. Always a lot of fun. Four seasons of the year. And if all goes well, we do get our share of riding, even in the worst of conditions. Last couple of days, the roads have been so salty, though. But we still enjoyed it. It's still better than that day on Rikers Island or Alcatraz or whatever. I don't know. It's in witness protection. Anyway, so my overall feeling is I really hope that you have enjoyed the video. And I hope we also participate in our question and answers, which we're doing. We're accumulating more questions for our next one. And it seems like that's been more popular than I thought it would be, but you never know. We'll find out. And I do enjoy making a video. I enjoy editing them. And I hope we'll see you tomorrow.